Welcome back, everybody, to Human+Kind, Raising Good Humans. It's our very big pleasure to welcome Luke Martin from In the Know Parenting, and we're going to be looking at pornography today and how to protect our children. We are going to go into cyber safety as well, but our main focus is on how do we protect our children from pornography. So I'm going to take it over to Luke so he can tell us a little bit about his background, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Mel. Great to be here. So In the Know Parenting is kind of a little sort of program I started a couple of years ago now that's basically designed around trying to empower informed parenting is kind of the tag, if you will. So the idea is to just try to, the idea is that knowledge is power in the parenting game, and we're in a generation where technology has just kind of amplified how difficult it is to be a parent of teenagers. Obviously it's an age-old challenge. Like raising teenagers has always been a handful, but you bring technology into the mix now, and just for parents it's just harder than it's ever been. So I mean, my background is in youth work for a lot of years. So I spent about 10 years working in a non-profit sort of world, running camps in the school holidays for kids, and a couple of different programs in schools and that kind of thing, working with teenagers and primary kids, and over the years just kind of watched the game really change for parenting over those kind of 10 years, and just went, wow, like you would spend so much time working really hard in the lives of these teenagers to try to instill like healthy sort of self-esteem or values, whatever it might be, but oftentimes they're going home to a home environment and their parents were just so completely naive to what was going on in their world. You'd almost watch some of your work come undone because it wasn't getting followed up in a home setting. Because parents just didn't know. They just didn't realise what was happening under their own roof. I went, someone should really start going around talking to parents about this and telling them, and getting them up to speed and in the know, and I thought, hey, wow, like why not me? So by day, my day job is working at 000, so answer ambulance 000 phone calls, which is pretty eventful and really good. And then when I'm not there, sort of in my days off, sort of throughout the year, I get around to schools and other sort of groups and parenting communities and go in and chat to parents about what life looks like for teenagers in the information age, basically.
Great.
I haven't actually seen you talk, but I've heard a lot about it. And apparently you share some very shocking stats in your talks. Tell us a little bit about those stats.
Sure. It always tends to get the parents squirming a little bit. The stuff that really gets them is, it's about 90% of young people have seen pornography. I think it's like 95% of young people have seen pornography by age 14, right? Or more recently I've been talking, it's at least by 18. It's like well into the 90 percentile. And you sort of see parents go, okay, like that's pretty full on, but I think there's sort of a subtle expectation there as a parent of like, okay, teenagers get into pornography. That's a part of raising a teenager, sure. What they don't realise is that the average age of exposure is now being estimated anywhere between about 8 and 11 years old. Which is really where parents sort of start to fall apart.
And
that's really kind of what is most shocking to them. So, you go, it's so young, and for any time up until really this generation of young people, you had to work pretty hard to find pornography. Right? Whether it's finding a Playboy magazine, under like somebody's bed or whatever, or that kind of thing. Or when I was a young person, it's like the only computer in the house was like the big chunky home PC that sat in plain sight of the rest of the family.
The Commodore 64.
Right, all that kind of thing. So whereas now it's so highly accessible that pornography finds you as a young person, which I think is what parents are not realising.
And so what sort of exposure are you talking about?
Well, so it's the problem is that the nature of pornography has changed so severely. So yes, kids are getting exposed to it at a younger age, but the kind of exposure is that it's highly violent, highly graphic, highly confronting type of pornography.
It's not pictures in Playboy.
Right. I think a lot of parents have still got this idea that that pornography is like a Playboy centerfold. And you go, well, Playboy centerfold is like you know, it's like a Wiggles concert.
Yeah, compared to what
kids are seeing now.
Yeah. Yes.
The other stat that really scares parents is about 80% of pornography online involves violence towards women.
Yes.
Right? Acts of severe violence, choking, gagging, spanking, all this kind of like a very sort of, there's actually quite like a rape culture around a lot of the pornography that exists online.
Yeah.
So there's studies where they've looked through a handful of the most major, like most popular pornography websites and looked at and statistically broken down, and like such a high proportion of it has severe violence against women.
And so with that, like obviously we have to, as a community, and we were just chatting about that, as a community have to come together and have some standards and, get out of denial.
Actually
and awareness.
And there's a huge amount of denial, I think, in the parenting community. And like we were talking about it before we started filming, that it's easy for every parent to think that their kid is the exception to the rule.
Yes.
And I think that's like a really prevalent problem. As parents go, but my kid's a good kid. Like they've got their head on right. And I'm like, yeah, they probably do. That's probably true. But they're also, this stuff is going to find them.
Yes.
Whether they're a good kid or not, it's going to find them.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we say the average age is sort of 8 to 11 years old.
Yes.
And you go, well, as a parent, think about it. Like, what age do we start giving kids tablets and smartphones? And leaving them unsupervised with a tablet that's got access to the internet? Probably grade 3, 4, maybe even younger. But realistically, by 8 years old, most kids now are sitting unsupervised with a tablet. And then the other stat is that 1 in 3 teenagers in Australia are accessing the internet between 10 p.m. and midnight.
Yes.
Right? So you go, well, as a parent, let's just have a look at the actual facts. And just, it's easy to think like, 90% of kids have come across this. Well, good thing my kid is in the 10%. But you go, well, kids have got tablets, they've got access to high-speed internet, they're using the internet between 10 p.m. and midnight.
Yes.
What do you think they're doing?
And it's really important to get across, like you mentioned then, it's not about being a good kid or a bad kid. I mean, my son, I can't remember whether I mentioned this last time, but he loves drawing, so he searches for doodles because he loves doodling. So in total innocence, and I was around when he said he was going to search for it, and I explained to him, no, we can't do that because of this. And then the other day it was something to do with woodies, because that's something that you feed our bearded dragon.
Right.
And I had to explain to him what else that would be, that Woody's probably wouldn't come up with something else. So it's complete innocence, but it's then curiosity as well once they get to that certain age.
Right. And like it's, you know, there are pornography companies that are, obviously they're powered by wanting to make money. Like it's an enormous industry, right? It makes up about 30% of all web traffic, right? Of pornography use is about 30% of all web use. It generates as much money as all of America's major sporting industries combined. Like it's enormous, right? And so there's companies that have done the research on the most common keystroke errors that kids are going to make when they're searching stuff online. And there's porn companies that have made pornography themed to. They've made animated pornography that's themed to children's shows, right? Like they'll hijack a popular children's program, adapt that into a form of pornography, stuff that when kids accidentally stumble across it, it's going to pique their interest and it's going to be something that kind of, engages them.
Yes.
And so, there's bad people out there, but like kids now just, it's going to find them.
That's right.
Innocence.
And I think also when we first spoke, Luke, we were talking about, and you brought this up and it was quite significant to me, was we have to be the advocate or the person that actually is the person that our children lose their innocence to. And in the respect of, we actually have to determine an age where once upon a time 6 to 8 to 10-year-olds, we still see them as our babies, but we actually have to, and it's sad, but at the end of the day, we actually have to take that responsibility to educate them. And
earlier than even they want to hear about it.
That's right.
You have to tell them about it. Because they're going to discover it earlier than they want to know about it. And it's actually quite a damaging thing for an 8-year-old kid to come across. It's quite traumatic.
Yes, that's right.
And so, you're like, well, they're either traumatized by seeing that too early, or they're a little bit less traumatized by having mum sit them down and explain some stuff. And you go, I'd love to wait 2, 3, 4 more years before I had to really take that their childhood away from them in a way. But it's like, well,
it's
they either
protecting
hear it from me or they don't.
That's right, exactly. So I just thought I'd just ask if there's any more questions you wanted to ask Luke before we went on to talking about how we actually protect our children from porn.
Yeah, so we've spoken a bit, obviously, about children seeing porn from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, right through to their teens.
Yep.
But what are the ramifications down the track from children who are seeing porn from a young age?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like society is only really just starting to kind of catch up to it. You know, you're just seeing more and more articles pop up from medical professionals and mental health institutes and stuff going, wow, we've actually got a real problem on our hands. But we're sort of, as a whole society, we're really only just catching up to it, right? Because technology has just moved so quickly. But realistically, what it is for young people is just really bad sex ed. You know, which is what I say to parents, is it's just really inaccurate sex ed. And ultimately, it's really negatively sort of exaggerating gender roles, right? It's pushing this idea to young guys that girls are objects of pleasure, right? That they're just sort of a plaything for sex. Because so much of pornography is framed in that light of with the women perform sex for the men. So it enforces this idea to young guys that girls are just there as a plaything. But then on the other side of the same coin, it enforces the idea to young girls that that is what their role is in a relationship, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, I was reading a couple of different studies where they've been going into high schools and they'll interview young girls about their sexuality, and in particular, they'll ask them about their first sexual experience, their first experience of intercourse. And this really strange response kept popping up from them where they would say, well, he seemed to enjoy it, so I think I did okay. Like it's heartbreaking to hear a young girl say that. But it so goes to show that it's building this idea that they're just supposed to perform sex for men, right? That it's not actually supposed to be a mutually beneficial, give and take, sort of healthy, mutual experience or relationship. And so it's being raised on really bad sex ed. And young guys now are getting exposed to it in such vast amounts. Like such, you know, there are story after story of young guys who'll be up till 3 or 4 in the morning in their room, just, you know, one video after the next after the next. And they're just getting absolutely overdosed on sex and porn. And it's reinforcing all these completely inaccurate ideas of what sex is like. Right down to a really inaccurate idea of what most women's bodies look like. That they actually, for the first time, they finally get old enough to get into a real relationship with a real human female. And it just doesn't actually do anything for them. Right? It doesn't, you know, it doesn't spin their wheel.
And that's where the erectile dysfunctions come.
They're having young guys, right, of all people, young guys with erectile dysfunction because they're so overdosed and so accustomed to what they've seen that a real life sexual encounter just does nothing. It doesn't compare to
and you
what
also
they've
mentioned
seen.
before about what they're seeing in the emergency rooms. There's been an increase with girls.
Oh, girls going to see their doctor and stuff like that. Also, like there's young girls going to see their doctor with injuries from stuff that they're trying to play out for young guys. Like anal sex has become just a staple part of heterosexual pornography for a long time now. So it's like, well, that's becoming more and more of an expectation of young guys. And so there's young girls that are being injured and having health problems and things like that coming from trying to live up to what young guys are seeing in pornography. Because more than ever, young girls are watching pornography because
they're trying to work out how to play it out.
Like educational purposes. They're trying to get an idea of what's expected of them in the bedroom, right? So the consequences are just toxic relationships and toxic ideas of sex, toxic concepts of gender relationships. And so the more and more that plays out, it's like we're in this funny time in history where like the gender equality side of society is better than it's ever been, right?
But the exposures.
But at the same time, on this deeper level, it's more toxic than it's ever been at the same time.
Well, you were just saying that before when we were off air, about...
We do all this above-the-line work with domestic violence and gender equality and everything, but when you mentioned 30% of, what goes on online is pornography and it's almost violence towards women, like there's all this underlying stuff going on that we sort of stick our heads in the sand about because it's not in my backyard.
Yeah. And it's like, well, any wonder a guy is violent towards his partner or verbally abusive towards her or just treats her terribly is because, like, well, if he spent exposed. 10 years being exposed to those negative gender roles and that submissive nature of pornography, of course, by the time he's an adult, he's not gonna have a healthy idea of what it looks like to treat a woman. Not just in the bedroom, but just in general. Because his idea of a woman's role in his life is completely off, completely skewed, you know. And like as you said, like there's all this behaviour on a surface level, but you know, this stuff that's going on behind closed doors and literally in secret. Like you know, the other stat is that like 70% of young people have hidden their internet activity from their parents. You know,
70%.
70%, which is huge. And now you don't even have to. When I was young, you had to be an IT genius to be able to like delete your browsing history and this and that and whatever. Now you can browse any major web browser in incognito mode or whatever they call it, where it's not even seen. It's this whole problem that's going on that literally it can be done in secret. It's literally done in secret.
Well, this might be actually a good point to talk about protection. How do we protect our kids?
Yeah, I'm going to be a pain in the butt. I've got one more question.
That's all right.
So we talk about protecting our children and being role models, and a lot of the conversations we have are quite, because we're both mums, obviously, are talking from a mum's perspective. But dads, especially as our children get older, have a massive role in this area. So do you want to just quickly talk about that, and then we'll go on to it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I think for dads, the big key is to lead by example, right? Because I think one of the biggest problems that comes out of pornography, and I should point out, it's not just pornography. A lot of it is just mainstream media that also reinforces those same sort of hyper gender roles and females as entertainment and that kind of thing, right? So, like, all of that is reinforced at a pornography level, but also in a fairly mainstream media level as well. So I think dads have got a real responsibility to lead by example. In the way that they treat the mother of their kids, you know, and engage with them and what kids are seeing as an idea of a healthy relationship. And I think a lot of the time it can be even in the small things, right, of just the way they honour their wife and they honour young women and that kind of thing. Or if something that kind of objectifies women comes on the telly, it's like, oh, we don't need to worry about that. Like, let's watch the women's AFL instead, right? And it completely sort of differently reinforces what is important about a female, right? And what they bring to society and all those kind of things. So there's a huge responsibility like that.
Massive.
But and they also have a responsibility to not be looking at pornography themselves, right? I run these sessions to a whole room full of parents, sometimes 100, 200 parents, and like you can always see a whole bunch of dads like just squirming in there, like in their chairs, just like, can we move on from the porn thing, please? Like, let's not talk about that because it's probably as much of a problem for me as it is for my kid. You can see that it's there, and that's obviously only going to be causing the same problems in their outlook on things and the way they treat their wife and stuff. So I think that's huge, and for dads, like they've got to have the guts to just talk about it as well, right? Like, because classic Aussie males, not great at talking about feelings, not great at just being really a bit of an open book. I think if they can get more emotionally intelligent about how to share with their kids, even talking to their daughters as well. It's not just a father-son thing, but being able to talk to their girls. You know, and for girls to have a really like healthy, strong male that stays in their life and they can speak openly with, of course it's going to make a world of difference, like in a young person's relationships and their life. Absolutely.
And they say that's how a daughter learns how to be treated by her future partner. By the way her dad treats her and her mum, generally. Like, that's where she learns about how to be treated in the world.
Like, it's a classic throwaway line, but you hear always like daddy issues, right? You always hear about like, oh, this girl's got daddy issues. It's like a bit of a pop culture joke, pop culture reference. And you go, but that's actually, if you stop to think about it, it's quite sad to think that there's girls who are like throwing themselves into really harmful, toxic relationships because they've never had a good example of a male in their life.
Set for them.
You know?
With all of that evidence and everything that is going on in our world, while we're trying to bring up to 4 healthy children. How do we protect them, and when should we think about starting?
Well, I mean, it's never too early, really. Like when we talk about kids as young as 8 seeing pornography, it's like there's no harm in being on the front foot, right?
Yes.
But I think, I mean, on the one hand, obviously, you're never going to be able to completely protect your kids from, sex, porn, whatever it might be. I mean, it's the same as like teenagers getting into drinking and stuff. It's like you can't completely protect them from the fact that they might go to a friend's party where there's going to be alcohol, whatever. But what you can do is educate them.
Yes.
Right. So that's I feel like there's like a real twofold approach.
Yes.
One is that knowledge is power.
Yes.
So there's on just like a parenting front, it's important to just educate your kids and build healthy ideas and values into them.
Yes.
So that when they are faced with it, they're going to have some sort of like point of knowledge to draw from. And some sort of like conversation to draw from to filter the experience that they're having at the time.
Yes.
But then there's also just a practical day-to-day as well, like of the logistics of how do you actually
because you actually see kids in prams with phones and tablets. So you actually go, like for instance with Jack, and you typing in doodle because he wanted to do some drawing. A 4-year-old could easily put doodle in.
Absolutely.
So that this is how do we...
Or just be on YouTube and it's like bit by bit you keep watching videos and it suggests other videos and eventually it's almost inevitable it's going to find its way to some boobs at some point, right? It's just how the internet works, right?
That's right.
And so, I mean, I'm really big on knowledge is power. I talk to parents about that heaps, right?
Yeah.
If you at least understand it to some extent, if you understand that world, like you sort of manage to wrestle back a little bit of power in the parenting equation, and you can then accurately educate your kids on what's healthy and what's not for them. For example, like I show parents like a video, like a recording of us streaming through Instagram. Right, and it would be very easy for your young person to be like, "Oh, Mum, it's just Instagram. Like, it's just me and my friends, like photos back and forth, and a story." And as a parent, you'd be like, "Okay, cool, not harmful, happy days, cool, Instagram, no worries." And then you watch my video of us scrolling through Instagram, and you go, "Oh, what do you know? 3 clicks, and I'm looking at essentially adult content." You're only 3 clicks away. You click from your homepage through to favorites, through to popular. What's popular on Instagram, which is like a worldwide sort of like curation of what's popular. Scroll through. Oh, what do you know? Girl who's a model in almost no clothing. Bang! I'm 3 clicks away from like a model who's mostly naked, right? I'm looking at what 20 years ago was probably considered soft porn, right? And it's right there. When you have that knowledge of how it actually works, you're the one that then can be in charge as a parent, and then you're the one who can actually be educating your kid properly. Right, rather than only really touching the tip of the iceberg because you don't understand the game.
And so what age legally should your child be on Instagram?
I think, I'd have to double check, but I think it's 15.
Yes.
Realistically, as I said, there's a lot of fairly adult content on there that's only a couple of clicks away. But it's incredibly popular for kids who are like, I did a session with a grade 5, 6, like parents of grade 5, 6s, and they were like, we've got a huge problem in this school of kids wanting to be on Instagram. Grade 5, 6, right? And so, and parents, it's because parents think it's just photos, right? Photos and videos are just between their friends. And you're like, it's not. It's access to like a whole world, like a worth of content. And it's right there at their fingertips. So I think a big part of preventing is actually being able to educate properly. Being able to educate properly comes from having knowledge. Right. So I think that's a really, really big part of it as a parent. Sometimes you just have to do the legwork to really understand what you're working with, and then you can really educate. From a practical standpoint, it really there's so many resources out there now. More and more are just popping up every other sort of year. There's just more and more resources for monitoring your home internet. So when I do my parenting sessions, I often endorse to parents a program called Family Zone. And I'm not, I have no affiliation to them or anything like that, but it's just the one I've come across that seems to be really, really good. And we can always put those
details
exactly.
on the page.
And it's not like, I always say, like, I'm not getting any kind of kickback or anything from it.
No.
It's just that it's what I've come across that works. I've talked to parents. I've been in a school where they use essentially Family Zone's corporate sort of package, essentially on a whole school front in like quite a large school, because it's just really well set up.
Yeah,
so I've heard it's got the results, and it basically will allow you, and there's other programs like it. It will allow you to, you can assign a profile to every person in your house and everyone's device. You can schedule when it can and can't access the internet, and even when it is accessing the internet, you can limit what websites it can access. You can stop them from being able to make in-app purchases. You know? It's like a massive problem now with parents is they get this free app for their kid, and the kid starts playing the game and like, oh, you can get a few more coins for just $1.50. And the parents get the invoice from Apple and go, oh, okay, they've spent $30 in a game without knowing about it. So just stuff like that, where you can actually stop it from being able to make in-app purchases. If your kid takes the device off that Wi-Fi network, it's got an app that stays on the device. They basically had like a whole board of experts just sit down and go, like, what does this program need to be able to do for parents to be able to sort of run their home internet for their family? And so it's really insightful. It's designed to be used by parents, so it's easy to use. It's simple, and so I mean, I'm not here to plug them, like to actually endorse them, obviously, but that's the kind of thing that's available to parents now, and it enables you on a logistical front to really just set up your home Wi-Fi to actually limit what your kids can access.
And so,
and I mean, sorry, but like, it's like at the end of the day, like sometimes you just got to take their device off them. Like you just got to take the phone off them. Sometimes it just comes down to being the boss.
Well,
right?
It's funny when I came to listen to you. That I've always had this. My son's always gone, it's mine and it's my privacy, and you can't invade my privacy. And I remember Luke saying to me, nothing's private, not in that world. Like
it's their public behaviour.
It's public behaviour, and you need to be on top of it. So when he says that, because I do like spot checks, I don't check it out, but I do spot checks. And he's like, but that's my own personal. And when you said that to me, it's like, yes, I've got a reason to.
Exactly.
Hasn't parenting changed though? Because I remember when I was, 13, like we try to respect our children's privacy now, but I remember when I was about 12 or 13, my mum asked me something and I turned around and said, none of your business. I've never forgotten it. Like the response that I got from her, I've never ever forgotten that everything is her business. And so, but that taught me valuable lessons. I don't necessarily do that to my own children. I have an addiction rule in our house, so I'll allow the kids to play a few things, but if I see signs of their behaviour changing, or I think they're asking for something too much, I sort of explain to them what addiction is, and that if I think that I feel that they're crossing lines, then I take it off them. And I need to see better behaviour before they can have it back again. But obviously I don't have enough. There's a lot more rules that I'll be implementing. After today.
Like it's just a matter of being the boss sometimes. Like you just have to. I say that to parents. I'm like, you're in charge. Like I think it's. Let me think. About 70% of 70% of the time, parents are the ones paying. They bought the handset and they're paying the actual bill for the phone, like for an iPhone. So you're like, well, more often than not, it's like, this is my phone, this is my privacy, whatever. And you're like, actually, I pay the bill. I bought the phone. And even if you didn't, you're living under my roof. I feed you. And this is very public behaviour. And as a parent, you're responsible for your child's public behaviour. And if they were saying and doing some of those things that they are on socials, that if they were walking beside you down the street behaving that way, you'd be appalled. So you still have a responsibility for how they're behaving in the public domain, and that's exactly what this is.
That's what I really like.
And so you hear parents all the time go, oh, I couldn't take the phone off them. I'm like, well, you probably could. You could, and they might hate you for it for a bit, but
that's okay.
I don't have a teenager myself, but I'm pretty sure that's just part of the process as well. Is that they're going to hate you at times.
Well,
anyway.
Do you know what I found, and this is something that you might be able to explain better, is I was having a chat with, like I knew my son had Snapchat, but it wasn't until I was talking to two 20-year-olds and they were saying that's their main form of communication. They don't use Instagram anymore. So they don't use Instagram. And I went home to Luca and I'm like, so how are you talking to your friends through Insta anymore or Messenger? And he goes, oh, no, Snapchat. And because, they disappear. Those conversations disappear. My question is, how as a parent do we foresee what's their next phase, because 12 months ago it was Instagram, and I would say from Snapchat has evolved. That's their Facebook is for us
Facebook's old news.
We're not even old.
I mean, they're still on it. They're still on it because it's got a lot of functionality.
But they don't communicate with their friends.
That's not how they interact. But they still have it because it's got a lot of good functionality that's helpful to them. But yeah, you're right. How do we
stay in the forefront and know that there's trends, and how do we keep in front of that?
I mean, the thing is, even the kids don't know until they're doing it, until they're using it, do they? Really, it's like Snapchat wasn't for a long time, but then it evolved to a point where it was the most engaging and the most enjoyable to use.
Yes.
So they naturally they use it.
Yes.
You know, you've got your Snapchat streaks.
But I didn't even know you could have like big conversations.
Yeah.
I thought it was just photos.
That's what I mean. It evolved.
Yeah.
And so like for a long time it was just photos, and then they built in the chat function, and then they you know, and that kind of thing. So
is there a website that you can see up to date changes or no?
I don't know that there would be a website that will give you commentary on what's hot and what's not necessarily, because it's so fluid and it's so changing. What is a really good website is Common Sense Media, which has an app and and you can just look at it in a web browser, and you can look at any app, movie, TV show, you name it, and it will break down in great detail for you. What age appropriate sort of bracket it's for. It'll break down why that's the case. If it's a movie, for example, it'll kind of give you an out of 5-star rating of how well it's suited to a certain age. But then it'll break down into maybe 6 or 8 different categories of different types of red flags as a parent you may want to be aware of. Violence. Okay, it's got 4 out of 5 stars for violence. Why? And it'll give you a couple of paragraphs on here's a breakdown of all the violence in the movie. I want you to be aware. Sex and nudity. Okay, well, you see somebody's butt cheek at this point in the movie, and they insinuate this at this point in time, or whatever, and it's like it gives you a really clear idea of whether it's appropriate or not. Same kind of thing with the apps. It'll go, look, technically you have to be 15 to be on it. Realistically, a lot of the content is probably suited to 18-year-olds and over. But it's also very popular with 10 to 12-year-olds.
Yes.
And it'll kind of give you an idea, and you'll get to sort of understand why. So it's a good way to keep your finger on the pulse.
All right, so Common Sense Media will
put the links in. But the other thing is to just be on top of monitoring your actual own child. Like the best way to know what's popular is to know what they're using, like you said.
You asked the question.
Yeah, you ask the question. And you also, if they know that they're going to be accountable to you for what they're doing on their phone, if they know that like once every week or so you'll sit down and maybe just stay up to date on what apps they're using, who their contacts are. Like, okay, like the example I always use is like, oh, you've just sort of, you've just accepted a friend request from that boy from the other school across town that's like 2 or 3 years older than you, that you've never really met in person. Like, okay, is that really necessary?
Yes.
Is that someone, like, I think of it as a parent, if you're going to send your kid to have a sleepover at someone else's house, like, well, who are the parents? Who's this kid? What are they on about?
Same thing.
What are my kids going to be sort of exposed to? What's the story? It's the same thing with who they're connecting with online. You don't know some of these older kids or whatever it might be from a bar of soap. You're like, well, why is my young person connecting with this guy, and what's the story there? Not saying that there's necessarily anything sinister behind it, but it's just more like, you know what, for my 13-year-old, I don't see that as appropriate. No. You don't need to do that. So if they know that on a regular basis they're going to have to sit down and answer for their behaviour, it's going to help you at least have a finger on the pulse anyway. It's almost impossible to know because it's always going to be changing. But.
And that opens up another whole can of worms in terms of connecting with people and accepting requests of self-worth out of likes and friends, followers, and all of that sort of thing. But that can lead to those conversations if you are asking those questions. We won't go into it now because we'll be here for another hour. But
absolutely. I think also, because we were talking about gaming before, and I would say Minecraft is almost like the start of the grooming of the gaming world. Yeah,
because the real young guys love it.
And I remember my son got onto Minecraft, and all of a sudden it was just through conversation I had to learn that a single server or a multi-server were 2 different things. And so my son, because I didn't know enough, and so he's 14 now, so this is when he was 8, I didn't realise a single server meant that he was more protected than if he was multiplaying.
Yes.
Yeah, because
and he had and a friend rang me and said, "Do you realise?" Because her son was playing,
right,
that Luke has been on. We've just found out that our son has been on multiplay, and Luca is putting his name in there. Yeah. Into a field.
You could be playing with people on the other side of the world.
Yeah, and people that we don't want them to play with.
Exactly.
But the same thing, it's still happening. I've learnt more along the way. He's 14, which I actually now, I know he's playing some game called Fortnite now.
Oh, that's all the rage.
Oh, yeah. Massive.
But I love listening to it because he's laughing with his friends.
Yeah.
But to begin with, I did ask a lot of questions about who he's connecting with, why, and who are they. But what I did realise over the holidays is he actually even said to me, "Mum, do you know what? There's this boy that's been in my class for the last couple of years and we've barely spoken, and yet we've been playing Fortnite together."
And does he talk to him?
That way?
Yeah. He's been talking
because my buddy's massively into it, and he had one of his best friends from school moved to Perth for work.
Oh, there you go. And that's how they connect.
They stay in touch all the time.
Yeah.
Because they're playing Fortnite on the same team together.
And
chatting on like the mic and the whole Madonna mic headset thing and everything.
That's right.
See, I banned all that. I said you can play it, but there's no talking with anyone. So he must be a single.
But Jack's still young.
He is young. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's where I didn't feel right at when Luca was Jack's age.
Yeah.
He had to. There was another thing where people can have their own server. So a friend of theirs can have their own server and invite them in, but not this whole playing against people. But I remember Lucas saying to me, "Why? And that's when I had to do the whole losing innocence. Is actually there's men and women that groom young children via those games,
but even if it's not that sinister. People will often just be like really horrible. People might just be really mean, and I don't want you playing
bullying.
with full-grown adults who are going to be really nasty towards you, or whatever it might be. Because when you've got the cloak of anonymity on the internet, people can be really nasty as well. So
that's probably even another subject, isn't
it?
Bullying.
We
might need to bring you back, Luke.
Yeah, well, I mean, because honestly, like the porn sex stuff is only one out of like 3 different sort of parts of the night when I talk and they all relate so much because this stems right into sexuality in the media and that kind of stuff, and also self-esteem stuff and bullying and popularity contests and you name it.
So for anyone, and we will pop all the links up on the website anyway, but for anyone who is watching who wants to connect with you, where do they
intheknowparenting.com.au.
So intheknowparenting.com.au.
So I'm just wondering if we've had 5 simple steps to implement with our children now.
Okay.
What do you think they would be? Like we're
just
going
5
home.
5 good things as a parent to go home and do.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
I know I've just taken you off guard, but I think a
put
parent.
Me on the spot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the first one is to get your home internet set up.
Yep. Protected.
Yeah, protected. Get your home internet protected.
Look at Family Zone. Yes.
Yep. Second to that would be get resourced.
Yes.
Because knowledge is power.
Yeah.
We've mentioned a couple of links in this one. The other one is eSafety, iparent.com.au. It's part of it's a Australian government. It comes from esafety.gov.au and you can go to iParent, and that's another great resource because the thing with parents now is like all the resources are there. Like you've got an entire web worth of knowledge to get. If you don't know how to work something out, you can just type it into Google. It's going to walk you through it step by step. So get your home internet protected. Get knowledge. Knowledge is power. So get resourced. If you've got a couple of those really good resources like we've mentioned, then that's going to be huge. You're going to have the tough conversations with your kids, which is huge. And you need to just go home prepared to strategically have those conversations and figure out how to do that. And it's ongoing. For pretty much every generation up until now, parents, if you're lucky, they might sit down and give you the birds and the bees chat, right? The talk, and that's it. And then it's like, out into the big bad world, like good luck, all the best, right? Now it's something that you're going to have to come back to again and again and again. And I say to parents, like, try to find a way to come at that with context. Rather than just like, sit down, 14-year-old son, we're going to talk about porn because I know you're looking at porn, and so we're going to talk about it. Right? And he's just going to freeze up and freak out. But if something pops up in the news or the media or
teaching
pop culture
moments.
or something, it's a teaching moment, jump on it. and you can come at that conversation from a bit of a wider angle.
Yeah.
And eventually get there.
Yep.
And like the best advice I've heard is to have those conversations in the car.
They can't escape.
They can't escape.
You lock the door.
Yeah, exactly. Too bad, son. But also, you don't have to look at each other. It's not like an eye-to-eye, face-to-face chat. It's like a little bit less threatening. So that's 3. 4th would probably be there needs to be like a really combined effort from both parents.
Yes.
Whether they're under the same roof or not.
Yep.
Right? It needs to be really consistent. And especially as we talk about, like the dads playing a huge role in that. It's really easy for one parent or both parents to just kind of throw in the towel. And obviously you really have to be on the same page about that. And the 4th I would say is just to be a mentor, to be a digital mentor, right? Because there's really like 3 different approaches that parents will take. The first is to just be like, I don't understand it, so you can't have it. We're not doing smartphones. We're not doing Facebook. We're not doing any of that. You can't have it because I don't understand it and I'm threatened by it. But of course, at some point, they get out from under your roof. They turn 18, whenever it might be, and then they're just on it like a crack addict. Because it's just so much so soon.
I heard that happen from grade 6 to year 7.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they weren't allowed to have it at all.
And then when they can, it just goes gangbusters. The second is, I don't understand it at all, so you can have it, but you're on your own. You just have to figure it out. It doesn't take a genius to know that that's going to be dangerous and it's going to be, run into some real problems real quick. But the third is to actually just be a mentor. Go, all right, I don't understand it, but it's new to you as well, especially if you're getting on this with your younger kids as they begin to approach technology and social media. You can sort of go, I don't get it, but it's new to you, so why don't we sit down and figure it out together?
Yes.
No, I'm not comfortable with you being on Instagram when you're 13, but I want you to be on it. But how about we put it on my phone and occasionally you can sit down with me and we will decide who you are and aren't following. Right? And you can sit down next to me while you can be at the bench having a look for a few minutes while I'm cooking dinner or something under my semi-watchful eye. And so I'm being a mentor with you and we'll look through it together. We'll figure out how to make sure that your privacy settings are appropriate and that you're protected. And then I'm mentoring you through the process. So to actually just be a mentor.
So that was interesting, the privacy settings. So are we able to get some information that we can put under the...
Absolutely. The iParent is a great website. Really good for it as well. It'll basically spell out to you how to change privacy settings on all the major social media formats. And, and it's really easy to navigate. Again, it's made for parents, so it's easy to kind of work your way through but it'll also give you stuff on cyberbullying. It'll give you stuff on setting up your home internet and all sorts of stuff. So it's really, really good.
Wow, Luke, thank you so much.
Thank
now,
you for
we'd really love Luke to come back
spat.
because you did bring up bullying, cyberbullying, and I remembered a couple of stories. But I think we will go further into cyber safety and maybe bring you back for another conversation.
Love to come back. Any excuse to just talk.
And delve further in. Thank you so much,
Luke. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
And thanks for joining us again on Humankind, Raising Good Humans.
Bye.